Welcome to Prophecy Montana, folks. Listen, we're going to be talking about a subject that is being talked about a lot these days, and that is slavery. And it was suggested that God has put his stamp of approval on slavery, and we're here to discuss that and talk about that. Does God approve of slavery in the Bible? Because there's a lot of accounts of slavery in the Bible.
Well, yeah, there was slavery in the Bible. I mean,
and slavery, a little history of it has pretty much been a thing for mankind from the beginning of time, hasn't it? I mean, since God has put man here on this earth, we've enslaved one another, and it's not a pretty thing. It's it hasn't been until America became a country that slavery was challenged for the first time by the Judeo-Christian faith, chiefly is what brought about the challenging of slavery and the treatment and the mistreatment of human beings in this fashion and in this manner. So so that's what we're going to discuss.
Cool. All right. Well, I've looked up. Actually, I'm going to give my wife credit. She looks up this stuff. I just give her the problem. I
miss being married.
Yeah. I said, what does Ellen White say about this, and what does the Bible say? Do you have anything that really puts it in a nice package?
I was just wondering, would she do that for me too?
Oh, sure.
If I call her.
Well, I don't know. The cat out of the bag here. There's two different things I'd like to present, and then I'll hand it over to everybody else. There is slavery in the Bible verses in the Bible, and then there's also some things in Spirit of Prophecy about slavery and the war. So let's start talking about the Civil War. Okay, so slavery in the Bible verses. If you go to Leviticus 25, 39 through 42, and this is how God really handles just about everything that has to do with slavery. I'd say 80-90% of the verses that I found are like this. It says in Leviticus 25, 39 through 42, "If your brother with you becomes so poor that he sells himself to you, you are not to make him serve like a bondslave. Instead, he is to serve with you like a hired servant or a traveler who lives with you until the year of Jubilee. Then he and his children with him may leave to return to his family and his ancestors' inheritance. Since they're my servants whom I brought out of the land of Egypt, they are not to be sold as slaves." And then another one in Deuteronomy chapter 15, 11 through 14. "There will always be poor people in the land. Therefore, I command you to be open-handed toward your fellow Israelites who are poor and needy in your land. If any of your people, Hebrew men or women, sell themselves to you and serve you 6 years, in the 7th year you must let them go free." I'm sure this is familiar to some of the audience listening. "And when you release them, do not send them away empty-handed. Supply them liberally from your flock, your threshing floor, and your winepress. Give to them as the Lord your God has blessed you." And then I have probably 8 or 9 more verses along those same lines about treatment of slaves. And it's all, let's just pick another one here. It says Colossians chapter 4, verses 1. "Masters, provide your slaves with what is right and fair, because you know that you also have a master in heaven." Down in Proverbs chapter 30, verse 10, "Don't slander a servant to his master, or he will curse you and you will become guilty." It's just comments about slavery.
Do you have Exodus 21:7 there?
21:16, I see real quick.
Let's look up 21:7. I think that was the verse that was given as kind of a question mark for this slavery, and the verse says Exodus 21:7. Did I say Exodus 21:7?
Yep.
What do you want?
21:7. 21:7.
Okay.
And I think the question popped up, and if a man sell his daughter to be a maidservant, she shall not go out as the manservants do. If she please not her master who hath betrothed her to himself, then shall he let her be redeemed to sell her unto a strange nation. He shall have no power, seeing he hath dealt deceitfully with her. No, yeah, then shall he let her be redeemed to sell her unto a strange nation. He shall have no power, seeing he hath dealt deceitfully with her. So how do we reconcile that? I know you and I talked about this a little bit, Ricky. There's almost like this idea that the woman slave is being treated differently than the man slave, that she's doesn't enjoy quite the same benefits of the Jubilee after the 7 years. But what's it really saying here?
Well, what I know that if you were a slave and your slave master, decided to give you a wife and bring a wife in to you, then you married her and had kids and stuff. And when the year of Jubilee came around, that you can leave, but you have to leave empty-handed. You have to leave what you came there with. And that the maid and the children were to be the masters. But if you said, no, I love my master, I love my wife, I love my children, and this is my home, then they were to put a doll through their ear, then he was to be a slave for the rest of his life.
Yeah, and to serve his master and to serve his wife.
Yeah.
I think part of the issue here has to do with the terminology. The term slave in that day had very little correlation to the term slave during the days of the slavery in the United States. There were good slave owners and bad slave owners in both cases. The Bible was showing what was going on at the time. That's how I read these. Doesn't mean that God approved or disapproved of it. It just means this is the situation.
The way of the land.
Yes. And then that became what was going on in the United States in those days. But when we hear the term slave now, we think of one ruler who just dominates this person. You will do everything I say every moment of every day, and if you don't, you'll be cut off. That's not what they're talking about in Scripture.
That's not an accurate
totally
depiction of what you're
different
saying.
picture.
Okay.
Yeah.
They were to be treated as a worker, as he was employed
But they were to be
by
fed
him.
and housed and clothed and all these things.
Yeah, they were taken care of.
What about this slave you talked about who leaned up against the post and had an awl pierce his ear?
Yeah.
That was his choice.
Yes, that was his
It was
choice.
it wasn't the owner's choice.
Yeah.
Right. He liked his owner,
Yes.
and he wanted to stay with him.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
So with God, in all reality, through the Bible or whatever, the longest you could be a slave, by law, was 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
Then the rest was on yours.
Do we have slavery in America today? Examples
We're
of it.
all in slavery. Ever since Adam and Eve sinned,
Like-
we've been slaves.
Do we have, because some of this slavery was actually induced through a judiciary process. This was,
Do
you
we
know.
have taxes? Are they burdensome?
well, how about jail? How about community service? How about all of these things that we have to pay back when we violate certain laws or do things against our brothers?
Yep.
If I cause harm to Dave, and let's say I caused him property damage and maybe personal injury,
You will pay.
I would be
Restitution.
I would be
Restitution.
commanded, of which, of course, I would never do. And Dave's actually in pretty good shape. That'd be a pretty fair fight, I think. He might even take me.
Beware, I did learn something about hand-to-hand combat in my military service.
Yeah, right?
But I would be required to pay restitution. And a lot of this is what we're reading about. Some of it, not all of it. I understand that. But some of this is actually restitution, because if you were to steal a man's, whatever, or you were required to pay these things back.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's another thing that I wanted to bring in from Testimony for the Church, Ellen G. White's writings about the slavery and the war. This one's pretty straight into your face about how God feels about slavery. God is punishing this nation. This is about 1860 or so, for the high crime of slavery. He has the destiny of the nation in his hands. He will punish the South for the sin of slavery and the North for so long suffering its overreaching and overbearing influence.
Wow.
Yeah, amen.
That's pretty straight out how God feels about it. He doesn't like it.
He didn't like it. They're plain as day. Yeah.
And that reminded me like of Jeremiah. When Jeremiah was preaching, didn't the king, when he was afraid, he let all the slaves go? Then of course changed his mind. Then had them. Oh.
Well, what else in the Bible was not necessarily had that God's stamp of approval? Can you guys think of anything else that God sort of tolerated at times?
Divorce.
Divorce.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Kings?
Israel wanted kings.
Israel wanted
give us
kings?
kings. Everybody else has kings. We need kings.
I know.
God says
God
you
was
don't
their
need
king.
kings, but
How about-
he allowed them to have.
How about
them.
polygamy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Polygamy is another example of that.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, but God had told him and instructed him in Deuteronomy, when you become a king in this nation, or, when you are king, don't multiply your horses and don't take on multiple wives.
How did Solomon handle that?
Not very well.
Poorly, I think is the word.
Well, you see, but Solomon, because he was so wise and so cultured, he would take on wives to spread the influence to the heathen
Oh,
nations.
wait a
that's
minute.
what went on. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Where's that found?
Let me look.
Solomon. Solomon is also known as the wisest man who ever lived, but Solomon was a man.
It took 3,000
Enough
women to
said.
take him down, but they finally did. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yes.
No.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, the point of this is that we have sold ourselves into slavery when we gave our sovereignty over to the devil.
Yep.
When we handed it over, we are officially slaves until Jesus redeems us at the Jubilee. And we have been here for what, approximately 6,000 years on this earth?
That's exciting.
The slaves were commanded to be set free after 6,000 years,
That's a good one, brother.
right? Okay. And so the Jubilee is coming.
Yes, it
The
is.
Jubilee is
Time
on
is
its
at
way.
hand.
And no longer will sin have a dominion over mankind. No longer will we be slaves to it. I know this is a much bigger. Actually, I can edit what I just said out. Do you have anything else that you might want to add?
No, I think the Bible and the Spirit of Prophecy are both in good agreement about slavery, and it's not right.
It's not right. Yeah. The bottom line is, enslaving another human being is not correct. God never put his stamp of approval on it. I mean, he managed it because, again, God does not force his will upon us.
He gives us freedom of choice.
He gives us freedom of choice. You guys want to have slaves. You guys want to elect a king. You guys want to marry multiple wives. Well, the least you can do is this: treat the slave good,
Yep.
and treat your multiple wives good or whatever.
And that's what God wanted. That's what he said. Yeah, treat them good.
But
As
the-
a hired worker.
But I mean, at the end of the day, God does not approve of it.
No.
We live in a day and age now that we have God's will very clearly spelled out for us in the Bible and what He does expect from mankind, and so with that, we would be good as Christians to vehemently, be contrary to slavery. No, what's the word? What's a good word?
We're against slavery.
To be against slavery. It's just as simple as that.
Yeah.
So, thanks for watching, folks. Hey, thanks for joining us on the panel, guys. How come I'm out of words all of a sudden?
We've gone through a lot of stuff.
That's a rarity, isn't
Yeah,
it?
right?
That's a rarity. So, thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you on the next one. Hit that thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe. And, yeah. All right.
God bless.